225.
Bam, you're live.
Oh,
Keep telling it.
you want me to tell the secret?
No, don't tell them what
Oh.
it is. You could just keep talking about the workout.
Oh,
Hello,
and
everyone.
then
Yeah, you just tell me what the
minutes of
movements.
rowing. And then we
Understand.
did the middle part was heavy back squats, 80% into running. And then the last part was toes to bar, burpee box jump overs, and skiing.
Yeah, it was pretty nice.
It was chill.
Yeah.
It was chill. Oh, Craig.
See Jizzle.
Oh yeah. See what Harley sounds like, Tyler? Weird.
I sound weird.
No, see that? You hear it? You hear how his sounds?
Yeah.
Tyler sounds kind of echoey. Is that
Yeah.
what you mean?
Trying to figure out why his sounds
Is
like
it?
that. Hello, Craig.
I don't know, man.
Hi,
All right.
Craig.
I'll fly out there and be your IT guy.
I need
seems
one,
like
dude. I'm
reasonable.
so bad at this stuff.
Sienna, let's go.
Oh,
See
man.
Jizzle in the house.
Go. We needed that. This is the guest appearance we really needed.
Oh boy. Come on. It was not.
Hold on, before we go any further, it was a couple weeks ago, and CJ was writing in the comments. Apparently, we kept saying "to your point," and CJ was like, "New morning drinking game," and then Heather said it, and she was like, "Drink." And CJ, I just want you to know that didn't go unnoticed, and it was really funny.
To your point.
Thank you.
To your point.
My real
That
question.
one, no, it's that one, and the other one. It's very similar. What do you say? That said, it was like
Do
this.
I say that?
No,
or does
Harley
Todd
says
say-
that.
oh,
Harley says that.
Heather says to your point.
to your point. To your point. I can't help it. I'm sorry.
We're trying.
I hate
to-
people that say, like, I'm going to piggyback off that. I'm like, dude, no one's piggybacking anything.
You should say I'm gonna coattails off that.
I'm going to ride your coattails.
Yeah, ride your coattails.
He was trying to, like, shorten the phrase.
Oh.
He would always say, I can't think of it because
Well.
we always laugh about it, but I can't think of it now.
I will say this.
Yeah, that's what it is. I will say this.
What will you say? When people say I will say this, you say, what will you say?
When Jeff used to always say, I will say this.
What will you say? We got 3 watchers. All right. One of them's Craig. Who's the other 2? Comment in the chat. Let us know. Let it be known. Let it be known. Come on. All right. Well, we got a special one today as they comment. No one's commenting. Sorry. We'll get comments later. Oh, here we go. Cody. Nathaniel.
Cody's upset because he lost. He wasn't first.
Yeah. Yeah, he had a hard one today, so we'll give it to him. He's a little tired. He had to do some wall balls and ring muscle ups. Oh, yeah. Here we go. All right. Well, today we're going to talk about team. That's why we got CJ on. Team.
Nice.
CrossFit team workouts. All right. Before we start, team is team actually better than individual on a base level?
Better how so?
I just
Yeah,
In
that's my
what way?
question.
I know, but that's the question they ask you when you're like on the interview. Because like they asked Noah Olson the same thing. They're like, "Is team actually better than individual?" And then he
Well,
had
I
to
think
answer
that
it.
in that context, it's like a personal preference. Like, do you enjoy being on a team with people doing fitness? I think the mistake, we always say this, people think team is easier. It's definitely not.
I was gonna say which one
It's definitely not
broadly. Which
easier.
one is harder,
I think
being
they're
an
both-
individual or
they're
being a
both
team?
equally challenging.
This year, I would say individual was much more taxing on the body and more well-rounded in programming. I think that they had to navigate a lot more volume across 3 days rather than the teams really just had to squat a lot for 2 days. Like our legs were wrecked, but like otherwise I was fine. So
Okay.
I would say this year's programming at the semifinal level specifically, individual is much harder.
Yeah. Well, I think historically team workouts, like the volume's a lot less. But I don't feel like it's been like that lately. I feel like the volume's been a lot crazier. Like when you guys had to do all that running this year. So that was like, I think in the past they would have just like had you run on a runner and you would have split that running up. But the fact that you guys had to do those 800s volume wise, I think it's becoming more challenging teams than it has historically in the past.
Yeah. All right. Well, originally Heather, you were on team twice.
I
2013, 2014, when it was
I
teams
was.
of 6.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think it was very different then.
It was.
I think
Absolutely.
the stuff now.
Well,
mean,
Marissa
honestly-
and I were joking yesterday because we were pulling out that worm. And I was like, oh, remember when we used to do 6-man worms? Because that was, whew.
Yeah, 6 people on one worm. Think about that. Like some people have a hard time with 4 people on a
I
worm.
know. With 6, it
Yeah,
was
2 other
horrible.
dummies on there.
We were just talking about that when we did Granite Games and how we had the worm, and Marissa and I just literally blacked out. And she was like bringing about how you guys were in the stands and you literally were like up, down, up, down, and we were just like blacked out the whole
Yeah,
time.
they couldn't even handle it.
Yeah.
But
Good
yeah, I mean,
times.
when it was 6 people versus now, I think in the last 4 years, 3-4 years, it's gotten a lot better. I think even since they made the switch in 2019 to like the super teams, because before you could hide a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. Like you could, because there's a lot of interval. Like, I mean, CJ didn't even do any ring muscle ups in 2014. We were crushing it because they had that rule where you didn't.
I also lifted 0 pounds and I
Huh.
handstand walked 8 feet. So like I was thinking about that. I was like, yeah, this year's semifinal, I really improved because I lifted more than 0 pounds in the lifting event and I walked more than 8 feet on my hands.
That's because you had better teammates who weren't trying to hog the barbell.
Sick.
We could talk about that too. Yeah, but like with 6 people, and Dave has talked about this, like logistically, they've always tried, and it just is like a cluster. There's like too many people on the field, and it's hard to create workouts where you have even balance of like everybody gets exposed. You could hide a lot of people, and just generally the sport has grown across an individuals and team that you're like looking at going, oh man, it's really tough. Like especially this year, I mean, we could go through a lot of workouts, but you could hide people in the years prior, and you could like have like a really enduring like couple of people and a couple of people that are super strong, and then it would like balance the team out for the tests. But now with the way they're doing it, like even in 2022 with the clean and jerk, I mean, you guys have done every semi or quarterfinal that they've had, Harley and CJ on team. Out of those, like what year could you hide people for the 4? Because these are 4 teams of 4 from 2021 all the way to 2024.
But also keep in mind, like back then, 2012, 13, 14, it was more like the affiliate. So like,
no, it's still the affiliate. The way they make the rules. Like you look at this year's roster. But I mean,
back then it was like hiding people, and you weren't making super teams back then, right? So it was like.
Are you serious? Look at Jason Kalipa's team in 2015. Rich Froning.
Okay, I didn't say 2015. I said
that's a year later.
Well,
there have been super teams
I feel
since
like
the beginning.
when we did it
CrossFit
in 2013, 14,
CrossFit Invictus, 10, 11 years of affiliates, super teams. Okay. Fort Vancouver, super teams.
Well, we weren't recruiting people to Sundown.
That's because we were dumb.
When we were doing it.
There has always that's one of my biggest arguments. People say like, "Oh, super teams." It's like there has always been super teams. CrossFit New England, super teams. Like James Hobart was on that team before he went to Mayhem. There's always been super teams. I get annoyed with that. I'm sorry, Heather. Always been.
You're missing my point. But
no, I'm not.
Okay.
Your point was
what was
super
CJ
teams.
and Hardley's question? What were you asking?
The question was, out of the 4 years, is there any year that stands out where you could hide athletes the way you could in the inception of the Affiliate Cup in 2009 all the way till 2018? Because we don't count 2019 or 2020. You're muted, dude. Oh, you gotta pay your internet bill. CJ's frozen. Harley's muted.
Okay, CJ's frozen. So I'll talk then. Or she can use my microphone.
Look at she just got a permanent smile on her face. Look at this. Look at her thing. Should we drop her out?
No.
Look at it. Look at it smiling. You see it? Oh, she's in 2 screens now. It's crazy.
There you go.
All right. So I'll just speak from my perspective. We did 2021 in Rochester with you, in which I think we probably, if we had 3 exceptional individuals, we probably could have still made it through with you, because you stepped in and filled the spot and you weren't in great shape from a training and competitive
honest.
perspective.
If I could have did those handstand push-ups, we would have had a shot.
Yeah, I mean, I think like there was just like 1 or 2 things that like you just didn't have the capacity in that given year. And I think that everything that year was relay oriented. It was basically like all individual workouts. So if we had 3 individuals that could give you bank you more time, we probably could have still squeaked in to semifinals, but we wouldn't have necessarily been competitive at the semifinal level necessarily, because we just would have
No,
been
100%.
exposed.
I have been.
22, that was the year that CJ went with DTC's team. If you had 1 bad workout, I think you would have been fine. But from what my analysis of what happened for them is they had 3 individuals with holes, and they got exposed in 3 different workouts rather than 3 people with the same hole and getting exposed in 1 workout.
One workout.
Mhm.
So they got
Break that down. I like that. That's good. Explain that.
okay. So like athlete A couldn't do muscle ups, athlete B couldn't do handstand push-ups, or sorry, handstand walking, and athlete C had depth issues in pistols. And so they got punished in 3 separate workouts for 3 different athletes, rather than if they had 3 people who couldn't do muscle ups well, but they could do all of the other things really well, then they would have only been punished in 1 test versus 3 of the 5 tests.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that can make a
This year
big
with
difference.
workouts too?
I'm sorry.
Do you think that could have happened this year with the workouts and quarters as well?
This year, so we're going to skip 2023 then,
We
based
can
on
talk
that.
about it if you want. 2023.
I don't
Yeah.
really pay attention last year.
There was
So-
rowing, shoulder overhead rope climbs, and then
Yep.
there was
Thrusters, shuttle runs.
dumbbell thruster, shuttle runs, handstand walk, front squat, bar muscle up, chest to bar thing with GHDs into clean and jerks
Oh, clean and jerks. Yeah.
as like part A, part B.
Yeah. I don't really have an opinion about those tests. I haven't really thought about them enough to really give a thoughtful answer
DJ
on
did 'em,
those.
so she could talk
Yeah.
about it.
She just can't hear anything because it's all coming through my headphones.
Oh boy. Have her click the link again. See if she can get
She's
on.
trying to. Her internet, it's not working on her connection. I don't know why. Anyway, so this year we had the muscle up, front squat, and burpee. I think that test, you could only hide someone if you had 3 exceptional muscle up people. But even then, like you would have the guys would have to be able to take so much of the work, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then from there, the second test was toe to bar, dumbbell snatch. I don't think you could hide anyone in that workout because it was team of 4 synchro. I think that was a very well-written test to see the entire team's capacity of moving the dumbbell and, performing dense sets of synchro toes to bar. Workout 3 was handstand push-ups and wall balls. You could definitely hide someone in the handstand push-ups there, especially if you had an exceptional, like the other person was exceptional at handstand push-ups. You could definitely hide someone there. That said, our team's balance did not have enough to hide people, so we kind of got punished there, and that's okay, because it wasn't enough to take us out. Then what was the 4th one? Oh, deadlifts, shoulder to overhead.
Mhm.
I think that ready to travel workout, you couldn't really hide someone there, but I think you could have gone small enough sets that you probably wouldn't have been punished beyond belief, as long as, or like without, you wouldn't have been taken out from it, but you wouldn't have excelled in it.
Yeah.
I think that as long as you could cycle the shoulder to overhead fairly well and keep the time between sets short, like you probably could have hidden someone. But if you have more than one person, back to that initial sort of comment about the athlete A, B, and C all having different weaknesses, if you had multiple people with that limitation of shoulder to overhead in that last workout, or capacity in the second workout, or handstand push-up endurance in the third workout. If you had multiple people with the same limitation there, I think actually probably would have punished the team a lot. So
Yeah.
if you had one individual with a bad, sort of deal of the cards, you probably would have been okay as long as the other people were exceptional. But if you had a bunch of average people, you probably weren't going to be able to make it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's true for everything. But that's a good evaluation. I think that's how it's been the last couple of years. Like that was good. I didn't even think about the 2022 year with having 3 different people have the 3 different deficits, and
Yeah.
it shows up. So it's like you had one good workout because
Mhm.
you all are so different. Like, because I think that's the thing. Like Heather, our time, or Heather's time, she was way more team athlete, and just in general, ours time of making teams back in the day, it was like a thing where like you get the strong guy and you get like the enduring person and you get this, and you try to like makeshift these people like it's Voltron or like the
You're
Power
trying
Rangers.
to create a balanced team rather than like having 4 people
Everybody
who are
balanced.
good.
Yeah.
Every individual is balanced. You're trying to
Yeah.
make the team balanced by having strong and enduring and gymnastics from the different athletes rather than just having 4 people who are balanced within themselves and can
Right.
contribute equal work.
Yeah, because like even 2022, that clean and jerk, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or whatever it was, 6, was it 5, 4, 3, 2, 1? And you each had to do 5 and then 5 and then 4 and 4 and 3 and 3 and 2 and 2, 1 and 1. And you couldn't go
Yeah.
if the other person couldn't get through that barbell. It was just like
Yeah.
the second person
Well, and
or
I
whatever.
think back then too, like the skill level was obviously not as robust as it is now with like just the level of competition. So like I think the thought process back then was just like having athletes that could do multiple different things to get through the workouts and chip away at it, where it's like now it's like everyone is so good at CrossFit and everyone is good at everything and all the things and has all the capacity, where it's like you literally can't have like the thought process isn't like let's fill the holes. The thought process is like how can we have the most like complete team with like as little holes as possible, or like you're saying having all the same holes, so that
Yeah.
generally it's the 1 or 2 things that gets you instead of broadly multiple movements that get you.
Yeah, I think back in that like 2013, 14, maybe even 15, when there was team of 6s, the format of workouts favored the specialists though.
Mhm.
Like there was like athlete A does the 1,000-meter row into one other movement. Athlete B does the other movement into a gymnastics set or something. Like there was very specific breakdown of the MGW sort of methodology to where you could send your specialist in to do the weightlifting portion. You could send your enduring person in to do the rowing portion. Not all workouts were like that, don't get me wrong, but there was enough of them that it actually rewarded teams that had sort of the specialists in there and gave them their moment to sort of shine. And I don't know if, to your point, Heather, if that's even relevant anymore because everyone is so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think the minimums of things have like risen up where it's like you could identify like, hey, this person has to have a minimum requisite of this strength in the metric, has to have a minimum requisite of this handstand push-ups or ring muscle ups or burpees, cadence or whatever? Like, do you feel like that's something that crosses your mind, Harley, when you're thinking about teams or people, or like even when you're on the team? Are you like, okay, like this person's gonna be a problem because of, like, we know what the competition is like out there?
This year, for sure, at the semifinal level, I think that they really bias towards pressing and squatting and almost nothing else. So if you had a short leg on a given test, like for example, workout 1 was worm hold, 30 rope climbs, 120 handstand push-ups, 150 cal echo, and then it was like a relay handstand walk to the finish line. 3 people had to hold the worm while 1 person was accumulating work. If you had 4 people that were just moderately good at handstand push-ups, you wouldn't have lost. Like you would have been with the pack, put it that way. You would have been sort of in the average. You would have been in the pack moving with everyone. If you had 1 person who couldn't do it and you didn't have, on the other end of the spectrum as an exceptional person who could do 50 unbroken or 30 unbroken to make up that short leg, you were just behind the curve. And so yeah, from a minimum perspective, there are certain components in that test, specifically with the wall facing handstand push-up. There were specific components that if you didn't have the prerequisite, that minimum capacity, like you weren't able to compete. And it actually, that workout was a double-edged sword, because then you had to hold the worm longer. It was weighing on your system longer. So it's actually punishing the less fit teams for event one to start the whole weekend. So that was, less fit, sort of probably not the right choice of words,
Like
but the
skill
less.
bottlenecked by like this.
Yeah, I wouldn't even call a wall facing handstand push-up as high skill movement though, because it's just pressing endurance.
True.
It's just who can just straighten their elbow a ton of times. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, like, to your point, like it's you, even because like your team, you guys, I yelled from the stands because JP was doing a really good job with them. And we tried to get him to do more because of that problem, because you guys started to fatigue out and was like just trying to keep you in the race. But like to your point, like that's even still like, and everyone was doing a good job, but like I wouldn't even say you guys were bad at them. That's the thing. Like
it's just
everyone's
everyone's so good at that.
yeah, exactly. And it's just like I don't think people realize that when they're out, until they're out there and they see like, oh fuck, like this, everybody is very good. And it's almost a point where like you think you have a strength, and then you get out there with all of these other people who've been training this hard and are at that level, and you're like, oh, I'm just like everyone else. This is not a strength.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, with that, like, I mean, so we've cleared it out of like, okay, it's not the way it used to be anymore. You're not trying to, cover someone's butt. I open to quarters the way they've had it as far as qualification process to get to quarterfinals. You could do that. You could put everybody on one team the way the sport works in the open, just put everyone on one team and then push them through there. And then once you get to quarters, you have to now have this balanced team. Harley, is your like, and CJ, was your thing like, okay, well, now that you've done it a couple times, like what would just be in your mind, some things that you're like, no, there's a non-negotiables to like build a new team, or like any team? If you're just getting into the business of building teams that are going to compete, like what is your baseline? Where do you start with that?
Can you hear us now?
Yep.
Cool. Go for it, CJ.
I mean, for me, I think for me, the very first thing, like the baseline isn't even necessarily about like the fitness or like the physical capabilities. It's like getting 4 people that have the same commitment level. I think that's been like the hardest barrier to entry for us, the last
4 years,
4+ years. Like that's always like, if we can overcome that, then it's almost like I almost don't care. I don't want to say I don't care, but like it's kind of just like that for me is like the minimum. Is like we need to get 4 people that are on the same page in terms of like commitment level to the team, to the training. Like we're all taking it seriously, like in the same way, and not like, oh well, you say you're taking it seriously, but your actions reflect otherwise. So there's just like a lack of, we just like think we're just like on different pages. So for me, that definitely is actually like the baseline. It's not even necessarily about the like physical capabilities, but of course that is kind of like
that's where you start, right? So
Yeah.
for you, it's like starting position is like, look, man, mean what you say, and then act by it. And like, it's cool to say you want to go to the CrossFit Games, but it's a lot of hard work to actually do that work. So you just want somebody who says that and then shows up when they're supposed to be there, on time, ready to go. They're doing their own training with the same diligence of someone who would want to go to the CrossFit Games, not necessarily with your personal like diligence, because everybody's different, but definitely like you're like, yeah, this person's putting in the work. Like you rather have, at the end of the day, let's say a whole year goes by, a less fit person that's more committed than a more fit person who's wishy-washy, is like your starting point. I could agree with that. Then we go from there. So like, let's say you find 4 people, they roll up in the gym, like, I want to go to the CrossFit Games. And you're like, yeah, me too. And then you guys show your commitment. Then what? Like, what do you start looking at from there? What would make you happy as a clam? The next piece of like, all right, we got that figured out. So let's start looking at some things. How would you start evaluating that?
To keep it very simple, they need to be able to do all the things, lift all the weights, all the skills within close proximity of what we believe is the thresholds to entry. So if they have a major hole, we need to be very aware of it early on so that, again, to CJ's point, to your point, they can address their own training and focus in on it, with as much focus and integrity as they can.
Yeah, you gotta be honest about.
Yeah, realistic, very honest and realistic about where you're at and where your holes are.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, even like you two, CJ and Harley, like already acknowledging where your holes are, quote unquote, right? So that when you're looking for other teammates, like kind of what we were just saying, it's like, do those people align with you guys as athletes? I think that's like really hugely important too.
But yeah, looking at stuff like, are you directly looking, like, do you really think it's a good strategy to look for someone who's more similar to you versus someone who's polar, not necessarily polar opposite, but a little bit more opposite from you? Or is it, you're like, no, like I'd rather, because CJ, I know you pretty well. It's like, okay, like median strength level, and then, handstand push-up issues, but everything else is pretty good, and just trying to build aerobic base. Like if you find a female that's in that same bucket, are you like, yeah, that's it, like that's the answer?
I don't know. I don't know that I necessarily feel particularly strongly either way. I definitely think it is nice to have someone that's like again, like everyone to be kind of like relatively similar to each other. But I think maybe one of the things that like we've learned or I've learned is like, I think it would also though benefit me to have someone, I think as you put it once to me, like someone that's just like cutthroat on the team, like to have someone that would be like someone that's like pushing me along on the run, like I think we saw a lot of people in that kind of run worm thruster event this year, like the slower runners were literally being like pushed by the faster runners to like keep them to pace. And I think for me, that's something where I'm like, no, I don't like that. Like, don't touch me. But at the same time, it's like, but that would be good for me. Like sometimes I kind of need that person that is maybe like better, definitely like, that whole step better than me in whatever thing it is, that can kind of like push me outside of myself when appropriate. So I don't really have like yes, I want someone that's better than me at everything, or like I want someone that's exactly the same as me. I try to be pretty adaptable, but I don't know how well I am at actually being adaptable when it comes down to it.
What about you, Harley?
I don't know. I think that generally speaking, I like the idea of not being the best person on the team. And I think that in this set of tests this year, I experienced that. But I think when it came down to it, and I felt like I let the team down in a couple of scenarios because I didn't have a fast enough rate of travel or enough capacity to back up the rate of travel that other people wanted to move at. Like I didn't really like it. But at the same time, like I know that if we had, I feel like more preparation leading up to the year, I would have been in a better spot. Like mentally, maybe even a capacity wise, like maybe I would have been pushed earlier, more often, etc. if we had a group on site the whole preparation and the whole lead up to the season, rather than just throughout the open, a couple weeks when Paige was able to get out here. Like, don't get me wrong, like JP and I trained together about once to twice a week. He would come over from his gym and we would get partner sessions in and we would train together. And it was honestly like back and forth. Like 1 week, it would be a little bit more high skill, a little bit more weight. And I would, sort of be pulling him along or pushing his pace. And then some weeks it would be very simple, fast turnover stuff that I'm not necessarily great at. And he would beat me in things. And it was a lot of you go, I go, or sort of like, we'd each have our days. And then when it came out to the actual competition this year, it was definitely not what I would have said was my strength. And that's okay. Because ideally we are well-rounded enough that it doesn't sort of put a spotlight on those holes, but it definitely felt that way from my perspective. And so having someone that was fitter, faster, etc., was a good thing. I think that the things that would have been or could have been improved upon was the communication, the team dynamic, the preparation and the lead up. When those things really did sort of break down, or I wasn't holding the pace that I needed to, so that we knew how to like cultivate a better mindset or like a better pace as we're pushing through, those sticky moments in the workout. But again, I think that comes with the preparation, the team dynamic, more than the true, like, who's better on the team and who's not.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It comes with like huge understanding of each other.
Yeah. I think we definitely, I would agree with that. Like the major thing we're missing. So like not even, again, like speaking to fitness, I think that we just like didn't have enough time to learn each other as athletes. And like we have an advantage in that we have been on multiple teams together. Like we work out together, we live together.
I mean, that's a huge,
together, but yeah, I definitely think like I would say those are the like where I felt the most frustrated probably in semifinals. Wasn't necessary. Like it wasn't like, I think you kind of feel this because you even said it. You were like, I let the team down. Like, I don't feel like you let the team down at all. Like the frustrating moments for me in the workouts wasn't like, man, I wish Harley was doing his burpees faster. Where I got frustrated was just like, I knew that we needed to like maybe back off of the pace a little bit so that in the third round, so that in the fourth round, we'd be able to like finish strong, I guess. But I think that there was a lack of understanding because we just didn't all know each other as athletes. And that's where I was feeling their frustration of like, oh, I can feel like some people are wanting to like keep the pace or like speed up. But I could see Harley and knowing him as an athlete, I was like, that's not the move right now. Like if we do that, it's just going to get worse. And so I think that's where I felt the most frustration. And I think that's another like really important aspect of the team is like, knowing your teammates as athletes and like we did our best. We did the best that we could with our preparation and our situation. But yeah, for sure, like the time together helps with that. But I also think just like general awareness helps with that. Like I think a lot of people, especially if you're coming from like individual backgrounds, you're very much like me. Like you're thinking about like, well, what am I doing here? Like, how is this going to be for me? And I think that's kind of how we were approaching it is like, okay, well, how is this going to work out going to be for me? And let me communicate that to the team, which is, it makes sense, but I just don't think it's the most efficient. Like, I feel like, was it Adrian that said in his commentary that I was like, I actually really like that. Todd, I think you said it too, where he was like, on team, you really need to be like, you put yourself last.
Yeah.
And like, that's how team works. And it depends, but I'm like, I think that we were trying to like put ourselves first and just communicate to the other, like to the rest of the teammates of like, oh, I'm going to need this rest or like, this is going to be hard for me, which is important to communicate. But then what ends up happening is like, you're putting yourself first and like, you kind of need to be putting yourself last.
Yeah. And it was like too late to your point. Because if you guys had more preparation, like in the beginning phases, you do want to communicate those things, right? And over time, you'll learn about each other, and then you'll know, you're like, okay, I know CJ's needs this, I know Harley needs that, and they know that I need this and I need that, and then you start working as one unit. But because that's all you guys had, that was the only tactic that you can use because of the time that you had. Like that was the choice, and that's the right choice. Like if teams come together and let's say they're doing some like local comp or they're coming together during the open, similarly like you guys did, like that's the only choice you really have, and that's the right thing to do. And then it just leaves you with what you have, and that's about it. But like, yeah, to Harley's point, like the preparation starting sooner and putting yourself last, you got to sit back and go, okay, here's the workout. Like when the workouts come out as a team athlete, you should look at it and go, what if I'm on your team, it's like, what's Harley going to do? What's CJ going to do? What's Heather going to do? And I will know what you guys are going to do and then formulate my actions based on that. Cause that's really what matters. Like I can't act outside of myself without you guys acting outside of myself with me. Right. So like to your point, the pace, it's like, yeah, there were like Paige wanted to go faster in that singular workout. and some of the other workouts, like the running workout. And it's like, yeah, but it doesn't matter. Because if Harley and CJ can't run faster, who cares? Like, good job. You ran fast. Thumbs up. And that's okay. But again, it's like, well, what's the most effective things for us to do? And maybe it would have been a better strategy to stay together and have them run behind you, or, in like hindsight, it's always in like, you guys don't have a time machine, but yeah, it's those things like you could have over time learned like, well, we ran a mile, we ran a 5K together. We know these metrics about each other. We like know what these numbers are, and we've trained together every day. Like, I mean, Heather and I train together a fair amount right now. And we have for so long that like, if we were on a team, great, but now we got to integrate 2 other people. It's the same thing like you guys live together, you're going to get married, you've been on teams together, you guys know each other very well, and you still had trouble because you had to integrate 2 other people. Like, I would argue your closeness together and your athlete ability is greater than a lot of people. Even if you have like 2 best friends that are trying to be on a team together, it's like, yeah, but you're not like married to each other. But you do see a lot of married people or like engaged people on teams. And it seems like those 2 people do pretty well, or they fight the whole time. It's one or the other. But yeah, integrating those 2 other people, like, do you guys feel like, I think you guys know each other really well, but yeah, do you think that no matter how well you knew each other, was it still a problem that you didn't have enough time with the other 2 people?
I think that the only thing that really posed an issue with the lead up was when someone would get frustrated, there wasn't an easy way to be like, hey, like, we're just trying to adjust the session to accommodate this person's learning curve. And the other people were like, but it's 90 seconds rest. And it's like, that's okay. Like, we're just going to adjust it right now, because right now we have 2 weeks to figure out how to do this warm, clean, and jerk. So we're going to like pull the clock, take it off the clock and go. And then they're just like, but are we on the clock or are we not? And it's like, just take a breath. It'll be okay. And so like, that's a very specific example, but that's sort of highlights the
day. These guys over here, that happens every day. Not every day, but it does happen. You got to figure it out. Cause these guys, we have 2 air runners. It's 93 degrees outside, and Heather and Kayla are just like, who's going to run on the air runner? There's only 2 of them. I was like, you just do shuttle runs up and back.
He's taking this completely out of context.
Dude, you guys
right
got
now.
crazy.
We were going to waterfall. And so we were trying to figure out, and then he was like, no, shuttle run. And then, but the whole gym was full. And so we were trying to figure it out anyways.
It worked out
ended up
just
being
fine.
He was making it worse than it actually was.
To Harley's point, see what happens? We're not even on a team. We had that happen today in training session. It worked out.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. So like, when those moments happen though, like, again, I keep coming back to like the lead up. We just need more time. It's like the time isn't important unless you utilize it well. And so, for example, you and I had conversations about what should we do about preparation for specific events, right? We're like, oh, are we going to run through this workout in its entirety? Are we going to run through intervals of it? Like, what the pairing is going to be? And the reason those conversations needed to happen was because I had the perspective that's like, yeah, no, we should probably run through this a little bit more thoroughly. And your concern was, no, the girls are going to get beat up from it too much. And so like, we had 2.5 weeks to then like make adjustments, make audibles, learn each other, learn the workouts after they got announced, and like make strategies with 2 people who are comfortable together and 2 new people. And it's like a little bit challenging whenever you have those moments of trying to adjust the session to benefit 1 to 2 people more than the other 2, because 1 to 2 people aren't getting it and they need more time to like rest and reflect and sort of assess what's going on. The time and the greater lead up gives opportunity for greater skill sessions, greater moments of, hey, we're going to take this off the clock, but also on the contrary, time to be like, no, we're going to run our heads through the wall and we're going to cause a meltdown intentionally. We're going to see where the breakdown happens, but we have so much time in the lead up that we're not concerned about being overly fatigued for the event, right? Because we're ideally doing that once every other week for months leading up to it, and finding people's breaking points and the individual breaking points.
Yeah. Yeah, that's important, because you do have to
hear that whining.
Yeah, I can hear him.
Okay.
You have to figure out where the breakdown is going to be, because then you go from there. Like team coaching, if you don't figure out where the breakdown is, then you can't tweeze it out. It's the same thing with like coaching one-on-one individuals, but it's harder because you might coaching team and individuals. You have to coach the individual and then like go back in and coach the team and then like coach the team and coach the individual and figure out where those breakdowns are and then write individual progressions for each person and then come back and test it again with the team while simultaneously still training. And I think some teams don't want to go through that process too. Like that's the other thing. And now that you guys have been through it, do you think like that is a better approach of like figuring out where the breakdown is going to happen and trying to, guess the workouts or like look at historical information and build new workouts or similar workouts and quote unquote test teams every now and again? Or would you not do that? Like how would you start building a team now that you have someone who's committed, they're doing what they said they want to do, you guys have a lot more time and you're looking at training? Like how would you start off? You guys have a bigger background because you've already done team and you know where those areas are a little bit, but like what would you do? Because you guys are going to try to go team again, right?
I think it depends.
Oh shit. Okay.
Well, I think it depends. I mean, that's the first thing is like, we don't have two other people right now that are fully bought in that, are kind of, so like, we're literally at square one of like, okay, well, we got to find the people.
Yeah.
But even outside of that, like,
all right. So let's say you find the people. What would you want your first like couple months to look like?
That's a good question. I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, I think from, again, personally speaking, my biggest like pain points or like frustrations from the season, I think was more related to just like chemistry. Cause I think we all got along really well, just like as people, but as teammates, we needed that time. I think it's kind of what Harley was referencing of like kind of when there was just some like misunderstanding. We were on two different pages of like when we were doing like worm clean and jerks, and it was like a certain amount of reps with some amount of rest. And I'm, lucky enough to have you as my coach. So like I look at that and I'm like, it's not really about the rest. It's about getting the quality reps in for speed. And I was like, I felt really disconnected from everyone else on the clean and jerks. And so for me, I was like, I just want to practice on like these quality reps, whereas not everyone else, but like there was just like real miscommunication of like, I was trying to film and like watch the videos and like send you a video to be like, hey, what are you seeing here? Cause like, I feel like I'm behind, but like, honestly, all I was thinking in that moment was like, I wish we had a coach here. Like there were definitely multiple sessions where I was like, if we had a coach here watching us and we weren't trying to like coach ourselves, I think that would have had also like a very huge impact. And I think it would have like cut our curve a lot. So that doesn't really answer your question about like, what would we want our first couple of weeks to look like? But that is a consideration that I would potentially have of like, okay, well, how can we have more of like a coach or like some real-time feedback from someone that's not on the team? Because it's really hard to be on the team and simultaneously trying to like coach the team. Like, I just think it doesn't work. But yeah, I think I definitely would want to start with, I feel like starting out, if we were to be like, yeah, we're starting, in July and we have that much time, it's like, well, we're probably doing more like individual type sessions, but we're all doing them together at the same time in the same place. And then maybe we come together for like a CrossFit or like mixed modal piece at the end. And that's where we can start learning each other of like, oh man, well, like she flew through her burpees, but then she got caught up on the handstand push-ups and like starting to like learn those kinds of things about each other. And then from there is where you can start again, like communicating with a coach and doing kind of taking the like, okay, well, now we're doing our individual training, but it's more intentional about how it's going to fit into the team setting.
That's good. Yeah. I mean, we have a lot of people, like you guys are looking for some people. Marissa's looking for some people. We got another group on site, potentially another couple people on site who are like all looking to fill these teams. So like maybe 2 to 3 teams on site, and then like you guys and wherever you land, and who knows what else happens. So it's just good to know. I mean, because Heather and I being on site are going to have to take on a lot of that. So it's just good to know that it's like, that's a value, even if maybe there's pushback from athletes a little bit, but it's like, no, like you're not going to be successful or as successful. You could still be successful, but you're not going to be as successful as if you have someone watching you and being like, hey, look, you guys got to fix this, or like be aware of this, or be aware of this person. And then to your point too, of like, that was a really good piece. I didn't even think about that. I was like, I do so much of individualized training for people to get them better at their things. But if you're going to tackle the team thing, like it's understanding the group of people and building training programs to fit that team, not necessarily make them better as an individual. Like you still want to make them as best as they can be as an individual. But like the primary thing, or the first thing would be like, well, how do they fit into this team and fix that problem while also fixing like the secondary issue of themselves?
Yeah.
That's a really good piece. Thanks, CJ.
And I was going to, just kind of to that, it's like having more time doing workouts together, right? Like just, it doesn't even matter what it is, I think necessarily, where it's just like you're doing more sessions together, you're training together, you're working, you're doing team workouts, doing past team workouts, and just like, it doesn't have to be like every day, but like once a week, if you do have that time, you're starting in July, right? Like, so that you're getting that exposure and like, and having those moments where it's like, okay, this person can't do as fast at whatever thing, right? And I think that's how you're really going to learn it faster, is to be in real time with that, and then learning how to adjust with those people. And I think it's just more, it's just more exposure and time together.
How much would you guys say you need to like push in training if your teammates, like, because there's a line, right? Obviously, like pushing somebody too much and then they get pissed off at you, and vice versa. Like, how much push should you guys do, like when they're just not getting fit enough? Like Heather was saying, if you're doing a workout and they're just not moving at the rate of travel, like how would you most effectively have that conversation with somebody? And then what does that look like to you guys in training?
Well, it depends on what the format of the workout is for the given team session. So if it's intervals and there's rest periods and there's an opportunity to communicate, and maybe even like a second or third or fourth chance to go through that given movement combinations, on round one, if athlete A is not moving fast enough and B, C, and D are just like feeling like they're getting sort of held back, or they're having to pick up the reins, slow themselves down a lot, then maybe in that rest period, there's just a moment of communication like, hey, like I want you to put all of your heart and soul into this movement so that we can increase your rate of travel. And it's okay if we fall apart elsewhere, but just for the sake of trying to move faster as a unit, like let's develop that thing. Which, don't get me wrong, like that comes back to like, are we coaching our teammates or are we just asking them to go harder? And it's like, it's a fine line, I think, as long as there's awareness, understanding that it's all for the greater good. And it's not because they're trying to like attack someone's, deficiency and make them feel lesser. But yeah, it is hard. I think that because some people might be very sensitive to that and some people might not. Some people will be like, okay, yes, I'm going to do my absolute best. And some people might get defensive and be like, that's all I can do. And it's like, well, that's okay. Like, just fucking try more. Like, try doing that a little bit faster.
Like, being on a team, and I think to kind of CJ's point about like everyone being committed, like you have to be humble. Like you have to be okay with getting feedback. Like you have to be somebody who is so like wants feedback, because if you're just like the athlete that's coming in and it's just like can't take that, or just like, I can't go faster.
Well, it goes
I can't
back
go
to
harder. I can't do whatever. And it's and I'm doing the best that I can, right? And it's like everyone knows you're doing the best that you can, but it's like, can you do 2 more burpees? Can you squeak out a little bit more on the machine, right? And it's like, just because we have the time, like this is what's going to get you uncomfortable. This is what's going to get you better at your thing. And having those conversations with the athlete of like, this is our why, and this is why we're doing it, not because we're attacking you. But I think if the athlete is not able to even be open to conversations, like that's like a red flag, right? I think we all should be at a point where if we're going team, like CJ's point, like you should be thinking about everybody but yourself. And if you're thinking about everybody but yourself, you're not worried about the feedback that they're giving you. You're like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to try. And you may explode. And I think it's also communicating that to the athlete that it's like, it's fine that we got 6 more rounds and you explode in round 3. It's fine. Right. But like, we just want to see like where that line is. And can we maybe next week now it's like, can we get to round 4 without exploding? Can we get to round 6 now without exploding? And it's like, that's the training, that's the conversation. And I think that also builds the trust between the teammates because you're approaching it to them where it's like, hey, we want to get you better. And you're building that trust and that rapport with those athletes. And it's not like, well, you're terrible and you just can't. Like, it's like, it's letting them know it's like, we want to bring you up and this is how we're going to do it. Right. And we believe in you. But I think it just starts with the athletes being open to feedback and hard conversations, which sucks because a lot of people are not.
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to saying like, oh, I want to go to the
Right.
CrossFit Games or I want to go to semifinals. Like you have to be open to that. Like there's no place for excuses because like, as you guys know, it's just not going to happen. Like, cause you're going to excuse yourself from the fact that you got to make a change rather than like embrace the change or like hear the piece of feedback of like, okay. And the other thing too, is like, if you're giving that feedback, you guys could all take notes. Like, okay, we now know, Harley moves at 2.7 seconds of burpee and we need him to move at 2.3 seconds or whatever it is. And then you could get like CJ's super data driven. Like that might help CJ on the team to know everybody is ready to travel. And then in her own training, that helps too as an individual. Like you're going in every day to train. You're like, all right, well, my teammates move this fast, so I got to move this fast. And like, if you heard that feedback in that session, like Harley's saying, you could go into your own training and work on that thing. And then you could come back to the team and be like, look what I did. I worked on this for you guys and I want to be part of this. And I want to, make us go faster and be more successful. So that's good. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
What are, when would you kick somebody off the team?
That's the $1 million
Yeah.
question.
What's the thing? They put out the candle
Yeah.
or like, you are the weakest link. Goodbye.
Yeah.
They vote you off the island like Survivor. The candle, the torch.
Yeah.
Like what would
Marissa
get you off the team? That's
Yeah,
Well,
where's
Harley's got a
Marissa?
heart. He's not-
Marissa in the comments, please.
Yeah.
Again, I'm pretty like non-confrontational. So even when it
That's-
comes to like giving feedback, like I
You
feel
just
like there are
answer,
ways.
hey, you
they're
got to
like,
tell us
wait.
when they're off the team. Like,
Yeah.
all right, I got you, dude.
Yeah, they're like. I mean, I feel like there are ways to do it too without being like, "Hey, you need to go faster." Like Heather, you kind of said, like, "Hey, can you like let's try to do 2 more burpees? Like, how do you feel about that?" And less like, "Do 2 more burpees." Like, that's how I think I would probably prefer to receive feedback from a teammate. So that's probably how I would try to do it, and then trying to be like positive reinforcement in the moment of like, if I know someone is dying, just like, you're doing good, stay right here. And like sometimes, when the roles are reversed, it can be nice to hear that and just be like, okay, yeah, they say I'm doing good. But yeah, when it comes to like kicking someone off the team, I don't have an answer for that. That's not a bad idea. We're like, you know what, we're taking a vote, and
And goodbye. Harley likes that.
You have to have someone to replace him first.
the
Oh,
alternate.
Who's
geez.
their alternate?
Yeah.
Who's the backup? Because if you don't have one,
I mean,
then-
that's a good question too. Do you guys have like get alternates? Would that make it more stressful on team to have alternates, or would it be less stressful to have alternates? Like, because you can put 6 people on that roster. Like, how does that motivate you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where it can get like weirdly, like the weird vibes, like the weird pull, because that's like, well, now we're competing with each other for spots on the team versus like I think you can do that, but I think it takes like a very, very special group of people that are like truly all on that same page of like, you know what, if she gets to go instead of me, like on game day, like I respect that, and like I'm still there to support them 100% and not like she is dead to me now. Like,
Well, I think that
played
it's
team
also
sports.
like, I think an environment, like I think about like Invictus, right? And it's like, because Invictus has cultivated that group of teams and
Sort of.
athletes.
They got a lot of turnover though. Be
Well,
careful.
I mean, okay, maybe they're a bad example. I don't know. But I'm just saying, like, I think that at one point when Invictus was, doing they had all their teams or putting everything out, like to go down there and be an athlete and train with them and try to earn a spot on one of their teams, I think was like a privilege, right? Because you're like, these are really great teams. Like they're going to the highest levels in the competition. And so I think that gets cultivated because then you just feel like you're privileged to be there. You're privileged to be amongst those athletes, to get to train with them every day, to get to be better. Kind of like we were talking about last week about working with people that are better than you and that. And so you feel just lucky to be in that group, where I think sometimes, like, if we're just makeshifting teams, then it becomes very like,
oh yeah.
you
I
know
see
what I'm saying? Like
yeah.
you're just kind of like, well, you only have me and you only have this
Yeah,
person
that
and
can happen.
who else are you going to get? And you stop like thinking about like the greater like goal. And I think like that's how you're going to get those athletes, where it's like you're just pumped to be in the room and train with those people and hopefully earn a spot to get to go. So
Well, in that specific example, you have to have resources of a ton of people under one roof.
yeah.
If you have the resources to make 3 teams,
Yeah.
then it becomes, we're going to make the 3 best compatible teams for the given
Yeah.
individuals on the team
Right.
to fit together. Like it would make no sense to put whatever Kelsey Schulte on the team with Chandler and put Lauren and Jesse down on the C team.
Yeah.
It wouldn't make any sense, because you're then limiting opportunity for a lot of people rather than cultivating development for the C team, development and maybe opportunity for the B team, and definite opportunity to win for the A team.
Yeah.
And so like, if you have the resources to make 3 different teams, then yes, you can be very strategic and methodical in pairing the people and like earning the spots to like move up to the higher sort of tiered team. And it is incentive, and it's not, I mean, I'm sure some people would get overly competitive about it in a way, but like, I think that, to your point, Heather, it's easier to manipulate the narrative to being, opportunity driven and optimistic to be in the room, because you're in this pool of people who are great.
I don't know though. One of the girls we were sharing a warm up like platform for one of the events. I realized, I was like, I've met you at Invictus when we were down there for Legends, and she's like, she wasn't on one of the Invictus teams, and basically what she said was like, I'm tired of being the alternate. I wanted to go on the team, because all these years she had been the alternate for the games team and she never got to go. And she finally left Invictus so that she had the opportunity to actually go on a team. And like, granted, the opportunity was not as great because, it wasn't an Invictus team. Like they didn't do as well. Like they weren't fighting for a game spot, but she did finally kind of get to the point where she's like, that didn't matter to her, because she wanted to compete, and she was never going to have that opportunity in Invictus, because to them, she was most valuable as an alternate.
Yeah. And that will happen. So long story short, no alternates is what you're saying. It can't create,
not necessarily. They are important, because it's like, God forbid something happened, if you don't have an alternate, like,
yeah.
you're
I think
screwed. I don't think that you need to necessarily build the team with the alternates like you don't
front of mind.
Yeah, like front of
Yeah.
mind. But I think, again, it can kind of just depend on like the opportunity. Like when we're in the setting that we're in right now, where it's like, we're just looking for any 2 people to just like do the team with us. It's like, yeah, of course we're not even thinking about alternates, because it's like, push comes to shove, like someone will list as our alternate. But yeah, I would say, yeah, thinking about the kicking people off, I would say I would go so far as to say, like, I don't know that I would kick someone off due to like fitness, a bit like to abilities. I think that if it ever like, it would be really like just bad. But if there ever were a situation where we're going to kind of like kick someone off the team, I really think it would be about like attitude, commitment, like compatibility, it would kind of be related to those reasons. I don't know if I would ever like kick someone off for like a capacity type reason or like
Why
limitation.
is that? What do you think?
I think it's probably just insight into like what I value in teammates. And I think also part of that would kind of be like, it'd also be a little bit of like, okay, well, you know, if it were to a point where like, oh, actually we're like really limited by this opportunity because this person is like the hole is too big or XYZ, you kind of just be like, okay, well, we should have done our research then before like having them on the team, you know? So it's a little bit of like,
you feel
it's
like
not entirely their fault.
Yeah. But if
I
you
would say like before promising the spot on the team, like I would just be like, oh yeah, come train first. Like, let's see where you're at. And then if they truly are showing promise and good, you know, capacity and balanced fitness, and they've maybe been sort of climbing the leaderboard of quarterfinals the previous years as individuals, then you could, you know, make an educated decision of like, they are going to be fit enough to sort of be the teammate. Yeah. But then to CJ's point, it's like, are they actually compatible as like a friend, someone who can, you know, match the energy and the vibes of the day, like not to utilize vibes as a valuable narrative, but you get my point.
Vibes only for Harley.
Dude, vibes only, dog. Let's go. Shot it.
You're
yeah,
off
I'm going.
I mean, we do share the same. I think the three of us definitely share the same value of like the fitness can be cultivated. Like we've seen that happen within people. I mean, Harley still tells a story to this day about how he told me he wasn't fit enough to be on
I'm
the team.
still not fit enough.
That's not true. And he like, you know, made a huge change, worked really hard and got himself into a position where it's like, yeah, this is like a no-brainer, dude. Like, yeah, and everyone can get fitter, but like, and like still not be good enough, like you just said. But you know, you've bridged that gap big time. And that was like something that I was like, yeah, just right now you're not fit enough. And that's okay too. I think there's a lot of value in that for somebody. And if someone, you know, really wants to do this and they get told by teammates or a coach, like, hey, look, like you're just not there yet. It's going to take some time. If this is something you want to do, like keep working for it. You know, it's like you cut the girls off the lacrosse team and you're like, we'll see you next year. Get your stick and get to work. And then the girls who really want to do it will come back and they'll make the team the next year. Right. So like, it's one of those things. But yeah, that's cool. I like that CJ is like, all right, I can make you fit. I just need you to play ball. Anything else? Any words of wisdom for people who want to make teams from the people who've done teams quite a bit and been successful at it? I would argue successful. Because like at the end of the day, they took 60 teams in all of North America, all of Canada, the US, Mexico. You guys are one of those 60 teams. So that's a huge honor. And I would say that is very successful. So anybody who wants to do what you guys want to do?
I'd probably just start by saying, don't assume that any part of this process is going to be easy.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't take anything for sure.
Sorry, repeat that.
Oh, I was say, don't take anything for granted. Definitely. Like you still have to put the work in as individuals. Like you have to be, I think that's the thing is like, you have to be, that's where the balance comes in, because you do have to be fit enough as an individual to play the game on a team.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Heather? Nothing to add?
I got nothing.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was it. Teams.
Yeah.
It's a tangled web of yarn. Even the top teams, when you guys look at it, like I said in the beginning about Mayhem's team and stuff, and like name a team right now that's been like perennial. All four or all six are the same athletes on the same team. Like name a team.
Well, not this year. Because everyone shifted.
Yeah,
a lot of the big name teams shifted, put it that way.
Sure. And that's because like Rich retired and some other things. And like that, I think that took a lot of fire out of people to be like, I'm going to go team, because a lot of people did want to take down Rich. But
Like Mayhem is almost their team except for Kyra.
sure. Yeah.
So they lost one. And Invictus is a completely different team except for one.
Right.
Josh is the spearhead.
Yeah.
That dude's a savage.
I mean, Lauren was on their team back in the day.
Back in the day, but what I'm saying is like within proximity.
Right. To my point, there's not, in history of CrossFit, when you look at teams, there has not been a lot of teams that are the exact same people. The only team really would be like Hexpack from 2012, 2013. It was the same.
Well,
six.
Mayhem did have the same team for a couple years in a row, and then they would like
Lindy
switch out
Barber.
one person.
Yeah.
Like
Like
they would,
Lindy Barber, James Hobart,
mhm.
Rich, and then what was the other girl's name? Kristen,
Ella.
and then Ellie, who got
Yeah.
for drugs. And they were what, the 3 years?
Yeah,
he-
like there was like one Invictus team, one Mayhem team that was the same for like 2 to 3 years in a row, and then they swapped out like 1 or 2 per people,
Yeah.
and then it was like the same for 1 year, 2 years in a row, and then they swapped out like 3 people, and then they had the 2 years I think of success with Rich, Taylor Williams, and Nisler, and then they switched out
the guy.
because he had his cousin on there 1 year, which I'm spacing his name, the blonde one.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of it too.
They
Shit.
had him 1 year, and then they had
Angela was on there.
no.
Yeah.
Angela was the B team for a long time. He had Sam Cornier
Oh,
the
yeah.
last year.
Right, yep. There you go.
Mhm. So like
Yes.
really like Mayhem did probably the best job of keeping continuity across at least a couple of years in a row for like development, and then they would switch out maybe 1 or 2 pieces here and there whenever people's lives changed. I feel like that
Yeah.
was their rationale. But but they had Rich every year for what?
Yeah.
10?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess.
That's pretty crazy.
But to that point, like there's no team that's been like ultra successful that's the same exact people. Lots of teams, like there are the names of the teams, like the Invictus, Move Fast, Lift Heavy. Like you start going down the list, Conquer, like all those teams, and they've always just changed. I don't know. I'm not sure. You'd have to double check. Like
I feel like they had, I don't know if it was the same for every single year over year, but I feel like it was at least 2 to 3 of them every single
Right.
year.
But it's still, that's what I mean. There's never been like the same 4, the same 4, the same 4, the same 4, you know? So that's the other thing too, for people to be aware of. Like there's change, there's turnover, things don't work out. Some people don't want to do it anymore. Could be a million different reasons. You know, you fight on the team and you're like, this isn't fun. I don't want to do this. Like lots of different reasons. You, like Harley said, you move, jobs, life stuff. So that's another thing to remember too, of like, you don't always go like over and over and over with the same people. Just keep that in mind. And that's okay. It's totally fine to do that. Someone out there listening to this, you might be the first. You could just win the CrossFit Games, same 4 people, 3 years in a row, and then prove me wrong. I doubt it though. Harley's shaking his head. Not gonna happen. All right, well, I guess we got to find you guys a girl and a guy.
You want to move to New York?
All right, you can move. We still got to find more people.
Talking to
Let's get
Marissa.
All right.
I know. I was like, I feel like Marissa might be.
Yeah.
She reached out.
Yeah,
But
lead
we're-
on a couple guys
we're-
though. So-
We're at stage 1 though. We're at stage 1 of like, hey, what are the expectations? Can I commit? Like, can I match the level of commitment that you're looking for?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
How much is an apartment in Rochester?
probably like $20.
yeah.
Canadian or
You might be able to figure that out. I mean, Heather could buy a house and then she could have roommates. Be cheap.
Stay with me.
Tyler's gonna move out here too, and then wait till we get the new gym. That's gonna be like a year project. No one quote me on that.
is the microphone echoing when you guys talk?
No.
Sweet. We've been trying to mute. Yeah. Like my only reservation with the Rochester thing is It's like, if we did get a spot / rented a room from Heather or an apartment for the few months throughout the season, I would probably still play the back and forth game.
That's good. You need altitude training.
I know. I mean, that also is one factor, but that was not why. It was just because I actually have a job here. So
yeah. But
I'd rather not leave them high and dry for 3 months.
Oh yeah. But you also need to go back there and get that dose. It's good for you. And then come back.
Back and forth.
All right. Well, we'll keep working on it, but that was good. I think, in my opinion, watching and coaching some teams, not that, I got experience coaching a lot of teams. I feel pretty good about that. But I think it's way harder than being an individual, to be honest. Like, you can get more success on a team, but even then, like, I would say, like, it was touch and go for a minute there. Like, you guys were 12th in the quarters for the first 2 workouts, and then you finished like 23rd, and then at one point you're like 25th, and then they only took 30, and we're like, oh fuck, don't get a penalty. So like, it's one of those things where it's still so narrow to get into semifinals. It's very challenging. But then I also look at like teams. There's nothing against them. I just know the makeup of this team, but the TTT Endure team made it to the games, in the East, and like, you look at their scores coming in, they weren't the best team coming into semifinals, but I think they all had the parts like we're talking about, and like they were able to pull it together and hang on tight. I mean, if you watch that final event, oh my God, I was like, what are you doing? Screaming at the TV. Because
that was crazy.
Yeah, because I know those guys on that team, and I was just like, you gotta do this.
Imagine being Kyle.
Oh
He's
yeah,
probably losing
dude.
his mind.
Well, I don't think they even knew. Like Perrin and Kyle, because you can't like run the numbers when you're there, and they're not updating the leaderboard. And I think they were like,
I just mean in general, because they were getting passed, right?
Yeah. But it was crazy. But yeah, that's a good example of a team of like, they're very good athletes, but like not any standout superstars on that team. And because they are a good team, all 4, they made it happen. And like, I think as a coach, like that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the best 4. And that would be less stressful for me. Cause sometimes I feel like I'm always like trying to hodgepodge these teams together. And I'm like, fuck, I don't know if this is going to work very well.
Yeah.
I'd rather have confidence in the best 4 and just be like, yes, this is going to be it. And even if they don't do it, at least it could cause me less stress. So selfishly, that would be great.
Yeah. Well, as an athlete, that's what I'm looking for in my teammates too. So I'm like, I know I'm not like some standalone superstar. Like, I'm a good athlete, like that's for sure. But I'm not I'm not winning as an individual. So it's like, yeah, that's exactly like same vibes that I'm looking for on a team.
Yeah. To your guys' point, like the environment can change a lot. Like our conversation last week, like if you get into the right spot and you're training long enough, like and you got enough support people outside of the team too. Like if you got members in the gym or you have masters athletes or other competitive people that are just like really on board, that can help you guys out too as a team throughout, the whole season, everything else. Cause like, again, back to the TTT team, like, they have a huge supportive environment there. A lot of coaches, a lot of like, they got the CrossFit United Performance. I almost call it CrossFit Passion, but now it's CrossFit TTT altogether. But like, that's a very positive environment. Like DTC is a very positive environment. Like Chase came out, supported you guys, the owner of the gym, and like, that's super helpful. So that's the other thing too. Like if you're a team out there, like make sure you get your community behind you and your gym owner behind you and the coaches behind you. Cause it's not, like you guys said, it's not going to be easy. And so having that external outside of the 4 of you to be your cheerleaders and support you guys, I think that's also very important too. I don't want to leave that out. It just came to mind. Cool. That's it. Teams. Anything else? No? It's that simple? All right, cool. Let's
be fit and get along.
There you go.
There it is.
That's the
T-shirt.
t-shirt.
Put it on the t-shirt.
Add that to the list.
Be fit and get along. I like it. All right, well, we'll see what we can make happen. It'd be fun to have a couple teams. And we've got 10 masters going in the game. So we can make anything happen at this point. Cool, guys. Thanks a lot, CJ, for your time. Appreciate it. She's holding up the peace sign.